Hey y'all, it's Chaplain Cairns here, Deputy Brigade Chaplain of the 2nd Recruiting Brigade. We're all working from home, so I thought I'd make a video or two just to encourage us to refresh our souls during this time. Our tendency, especially those high speed among us, is to just work ourselves to death, and we want to make sure that we are creating margins in our lives after the Army takes the bulk, the lion's share of our day. How are we imposing our will on the chaos at the margin left over by the Army so that we are being decisive about how we aim our life at our families and through our families at the world? And so I noticed that when I first came into the Army that there was a condition that I had seen before, a phenomenon I had seen before, and it's called occupational burnout. And I had seen it as a pastor. I'd lived it as a pastor before coming into the Army, and then I was seeing symptoms of my soldiers that had a common root back to occupational burnout. And we were fighting the fires of the consequences of this, but we weren't fighting fire itself by going to the root, to this root. And so if you are working in an unsustainable way, or you have somebody else's job that you're doing because their job hasn't been filled, or because somebody to your right or left isn't quite capable of measuring up to the requirements of the job. Sometimes pieces of other Army jobs get scraped onto your plate, as you know. That was just kind of for the civilians who may be watching. But all of us know in the Army what it's like to have somebody else's pieces of other people's jobs scraped onto our plate, because we're high achievers, we're aimed at excellence every day, and those are the ones who are at the most risk for occupational burnout. It's not lazy people who burn themselves out, because lazy people always find a path of least resistance around work. It's the people who have an achievement-oriented, performance-based identity, and in the achievement-oriented culture of the Army, many people work so hard that they're sacrificing their family and their sanity on the altar of the mission. And I am a Patriot's Patriot, 105 years of unbroken active duty service in our family. And yet I don't think we ought to be sacrificing our families on the altar of the mission in a garrison training environment. We need to go back to some of the basics of the Army family and how we build community. And I think if we do that, we will suffer the consequences of these symptomatic SIRs, serious incident reports for the uninitiated, where these are symptoms of a larger problem of occupational burnout. So if you go to Google and you if you're a brand new warrant officer, you've heard me say this before, because this used to be an part of the introductory brief when I was the chaplain of the Warrant Officer Career College. So you go to Google, you type in the word burnout, and one of the top links, I think, because I've been driving a lot of people to it over the years, thousands of people, to this very simple diagnostic tool where you've got signs and symptoms to look for. Their mitigation strategy here isn't as fleshed out as I'd like it to be, but I think this description of how one feels when you arrive at this location of burnout is a pretty accurate way of looking at it. So if you go to Google and type this in, burnout, job burnout, this article comes up, and it's from the Mayo Clinic, which is a research hospital, not theology, touchy-feely chaplain stuff, but real scientists. And this is what they say in their article entitled Job Burnout, How to Spot It and Take Action. And it says, of job burnout symptoms, ask yourself, have you become cynical or critical at work? Do you drag yourself to work and have trouble getting started? Have you become irritable or impatient with coworkers, customers, or clients? Do you lack the energy to be consistently productive? Do you find it hard to concentrate? Do you lack satisfaction from your achievements? Do you feel disillusioned about your job? Are you using food, drugs, or alcohol to feel better or simply not to feel? And I would add toxic relationships to that list. Have your sleep habits changed? Are you troubled by unexplained headaches, backaches, stomach or bowel problems, or other physical complaints? And of course, by the end of this particular list, most of my soldiers are already laughing, and it just gets better from there. Possible causes of job burnout: a lack of control, an inability to influence decisions that affect your job, such as your schedule, assignments, or workload, could lead to job burnout. So could a lack of the resources you need to do your work. When you have unclear job expectations, you can probably hear our new quarantine puppy in the background because he's not liking his crate. And that's stressing me out. I may burn myself out talking about burnout. Anyway, unclear. Well, we'll just go right through it because we're aiming at excellence. We're in the United States Army, best organization the world has ever seen. Has caused more freedom for more people than any organization ever in human history. Just an editorial comment. See your local recruiter. Anyway, unclear job expectations. This is a good one. If you're unclear about the degree of authority you have or what your supervisor or others expect from you, you're not likely to feel comfortable at work. And I love the way civilians put things. Dysfunctional workplace dynamics. Perhaps you work with an office bully. Perhaps you work with an entire NCO corps and they outrank you. Or you feel undermined by colleagues or your boss micromanages your work. This can contribute to job stress. That dadgum dog. I could do a whole video series on the stresses caused by my dog and my dog 2.0. Extremes of activity. This is a big one in the United States Army. And we fluctuate between monotonous and chaotic. And we need constant energy to remain focused, which can lead to fatigue and job burnout. A lack of social support. If you feel isolated at work and in your personal life, you might feel more stressed. And in the Army, we uproot people from their family of origin and their town of origin, and we send them off somewhere else. So if we're not doing a good job to build community, people feel isolated. I saw this when I was first stationed at Fort Riley, and new recruits would show up after basic and AIT, and they'd get holed up in their barracks in the wintertime, and it was just, it can be a miserable thing to be a new soldier who lacks community connections. So, work-life balance, this last one, is the only thing the Army ever mentions. You hear work-life balance, but you don't hear it explored as a topic. You just hear it as a phrase. Work-life balance. Get work-life balance. But there's no training or teaching in how to do that. And meanwhile, the same leaders who were talking about work-life balance are the ones who tend to put the carrot out so far and move the goalposts and tell you to take the hill and beat you with the stick until you do it. And then once you've taken the hill, they give you another carrot. And the Army does this to people, where we who are dedicated to the mission just keep going and going and going. And when we get home, we don't have enough left over to invest in our spouses and in our children. And so we need to create those margins, because those margins, that time at the edges of one single human being's time, space, energy, and resources. After the Army's taken the bulk of that, we get these little margins at the edge. And if we fill that with more work, or if we fill that with the wrong things, or if we let the chaos at the margins left over by the Army just take control and take us down, then we won't be accomplishing the things that we want to accomplish in the Army, and I'm going to kill that dog. I'm just kidding. There's an organization out there for the, avoiding the cruelty of animals. But these stresses at home, I brought this on myself. Although I did let my daughter wait 10 years until I finally gave her a puppy. It's a beautiful dog. It's an Aussie Shepherd. We still haven't named it, so if you throw some suggestions our way, that would be great. So, so let's talk about what do we do in the margins to mitigate against occupational burnout happening to us. Well, there are some categories we need to think in, and I heard this as some hip pocket training when I was in Chaplain Basic. So Chaplain Tim, sir, thank you. But we need to connect with our Creator, and if you're not a person of faith, you can check this one and go with the other three. But for those of us who are people of faith, we need to be connecting in prayer and studying our holy writ, our scriptures, and connecting with God as God has revealed himself. And then secondly, we need to be connecting to our own conscience. And that first one helps because of who we are by implication. We are not the God of our lives. We don't sit on the throne of our lives. So being curved inward and being all about ourselves and being narcissistic, these are not the things that that should be characteristic of people in the United States Army, and they haven't been. I grew up an Army brat. I saw great leaders. My father and extended family, all in the military, all great leaders of character. So I had some great points of reference. But we're starting to see some unproductive leadership, some toxicity, and I think part of the root problem is this occupational burnout that we're doing to ourselves. So we need to connect to Creator. We need to connect to our conscience, developing empathy for the suffering of the people to our right and to our left. And you see a lot of us lacking empathy and getting back to a place of refreshment and restoration so that we do feel empathy for everyone around us. Ought to be characteristic of every leader in the Army. And then community is a big one. The enemy of isolation. Isolation is where people are victims of sexual assault. Isolation is where people might think that a permanent solution to temporary problems is a good idea. And so surrounding people with community is the enemy of isolation. So we need to do a better job of being less a commuter army, clock in, clock out, not my problem, but to be engaged leaders, to surround every soldier with the Army family that used to be characteristic, and we need to recreate. We have all sorts of organizations aimed at solving this problem, and still often our soldiers feel isolated. So we need friendships outside of work, obviously. Connecting to your faith community can be a huge help. I just had ankle surgery, and people in our faith community brought us meals every night because now Elizabeth is taking care of 4 kids instead of just 3. My wife, that is. And so our faith community was tremendous at just making us feel refreshed and visiting us and all of that. So you might think about reconnecting with a faith community at this time, even if it's just online, just tuning in. And there are people in your extended family and friends who never wandered away from that particular faith. So give them a call, send them a text, say, hey, is there a podcast or a video cast that you trust that would be good for me to just spend a little time refreshing my soul, listening to somebody on Sunday morning, Saturday morning, tuning in and getting connected to a local faith community. It's very hard for recruiters in our brigade to show up and do that and get connected in community, but it's absolutely vital that you do that. And then lastly, but maybe even most importantly, we need to refresh our souls by getting out into creation. Our souls were not created for cubicles with ceilings that have drop ceilings with fluorescent lighting that buzz at you and rob your will to live. That is not what we were created for. So we need to get outside. We need to get fresh air. We need to listen to the wind in the trees and feel the silence filled by that glorious cacophony and symphony of the birds singing, our neighbors doing various things in their yard, disrupting that. There's a really funny video that I direct people to, which is, it's called Prescription Strength Nature. And it's awesome. So go to YouTube, type in Prescription Strength Nature, and watch the first video. In this category of creation, I've never seen a better encouragement. It's so funny. A better encouragement to just get outside. And we can practice self-isolation. We can practice social distancing. But if you are going to go out, go to a state park with your family. Stay away from everybody else. Don't lick anything, but get out and breathe. Breathing is good. Sometimes when you get under stress, you forget to take deep breaths and to sit upright and to expand your diaphragm and to get oxygen into your limbs. It just makes you feel better. And of course, getting out and walking around or running around releases endorphins into your body. Probably not a good time to go to the gym. They're doing extra things to wipe everything down there to keep their membership engaged, but maybe not the best idea. So I'm going to make some videos that go a little further in depth on the subject of occupational burnout and what we can do to mitigate against it. But just begin to think in these categories of connecting with Creator, being in prayer and in your Holy Writ if you have a faith. Get connected to your conscience again, and that takes even for extroverts time alone to remind yourself of your own values and why you wake up in the morning and aim at life. That takes some reflection and some reading sometimes. So take care of yourselves. Take care of building up your conscience so that you feel empathy toward others. And then, as we said, get connected with community, even if it's online in this time. Talk to folks, and not just anybody, not just the barstool wisdom people who are just like, oh yeah, you can't let her do you like that, or I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about wise people, people that you respect. You may be reaching way back and contacting somebody from early in your career or in your family life. But get connected. Talk to somebody that you respect, where wisdom comes from, not conventional wisdom, but real wisdom. You know who they are, and you know they're in your life. Just call them up, ask them if they'll listen to you speak about your life, and then they speak wisdom into your life. And then finally, get outside, breathe the air, go to pretty places, stand at the edge of a lake, stand at the edge of one of those living water creeks or streams. I love to fly fish. It's my favorite thing. So I'm thinking about it right now, getting goosebumps. Just being where trout live is one of the most refreshing things for me. It'll be great connecting you to resources. We sit up here at Brigade waiting for our soldiers to call us because we can't travel and go see them now. So I'm just going to make some videos to see if I can't help you chip away at the enemy of the chaos of this time. So grateful to you for having watched. Take care. Bye.